Welcome everyone. Today I will be your host. My name is Macy Schooler and today's session will be a student and alumni panel. Before we begin, I would like to complete an acknowledgement of country. La Trobe University acknowledges that the land to which the Trobe Abroad team is located on is of the land of many traditional custodians in Australia. We recognise their ongoing connection to the land and we value their unique contribution to the university and wider Australian society. We pay our respects to Indigenous elders, past and present and emerging, and extend this respect to any Indigenous participants joining us today. Before we begin, I would like to do today's presentation. We're going to meet the panelists that will be answering the questions. I will be giving some questions to the panelists. We'll open the floor to any questions and then we'll finish up with how to connect with us if there's any questions that will be brought up later on. First, I would like you to meet Madeline. She has completed an in-country program in 2019 and semester 2 and has done it with the University of Oslo as part of her uni degree. She was lucky enough to be a recipient of the Academic Mobility Scholarship, which she received $7,000, which helped her with the basic living costs, groceries, utilities, accommodation, and etc. She's also been featured in an LTU article, so please go check that out and you can read a little bit about her. The second panelist is Nellie. She has partially completed an in-country program. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, she had to come home early, and due to this, she was lucky enough to participate in a virtual program and virtual Indonesian language short course. She was also a recipient of the New Colombo Plan NCP Mobility Grant. As well as Nellie, we have Catherine, which she also has participated in the virtual Indonesian language course in the summer of 2021. She had initially planned to do a broader program, but unfortunately due to COVID-19, that also fell through. Finally, I would like you to meet Mel. She is currently part of the study abroad team. She has done 2 in-country programs. Firstly, she has completed a 2-week short program in Global Citizen and Cross-Cultural Communications with CIS Australia. Following this, she's also completed a semester exchange in North Carolina during semester 2. She has studied a Bachelor of Business in Management and Marketing, and if you have any technical questions regarding study abroad team, she's more than welcome to answer any of those questions, as she has significant insight to the processes that they do behind the scene. Now, I would like to open up to ask the panelists some questions. So I'm going to ask each panelist what's their highlights of their program they participated. And I'm going to start with Madeline, if she could give us some of her insights.
Absolutely. Thanks, Macy. I mean, to be honest, there's so many highlights, it's difficult to know where to begin. I think some of the sort of top memories that I think about a lot and feature in photos on my wall include seeing the midnight sun in northern Norway just before I started my studies at university. I also visited an island in far northern Norway called Svalbard, where there are more polar bears than people, which is a fun fact I like to roll out. I think one of the highlights overall of exchange was the ability to travel a lot. I travelled on the weekends, in the mid-semester break, before and after my studies. So, you know, you don't have to think of it as purely a semester of studying overseas. The rest of the world is so much more connected than Australia. You know, you can get on a bus and be in a different country in a matter of hours and for, you know, under $50. So it's not necessarily expensive either. And of course, I mean, I met so many new people. I made a lot of friendships that I have maintained. Even through the pandemic, we have a WhatsApp group, so we keep in touch and make sure everyone's okay. And yeah, you know, have video calls and that sort of thing. So I think the ability to meet people from all over the world was definitely a really big highlight.
Awesome, thank you for that. Next, I would like to ask Nellie to give us some of her highlights of her experience.
Yeah, I would say there's heaps of highlights that I can think of as well. I think the cultural immersion is really cool. Um, when you do an overseas program, it's like you don't get that opportunity in everyday life to be immersed in culture and make connections. Um, I think like when I was on the in-country program, it was great. Like being immersed in the culture and getting to see some of the magnificent sites. Um, and then with the virtual program, we still, I think the cultural stuff was really cool and getting connected to people, talking to people that have really interesting stories and making friendships because like I'm still friends with people from both programs, both people I did program with and then people in Indonesia as well. So still keep in touch with them.
Thank you. Now we would like to ask Catherine, what are some of your highlights of completing your virtual program?
Hi. Although my program took place virtually, I did manage to have a great time with everyone, and I did have some highlights as well. I think mainly meeting a lot of new people, whether it was from other students from other Australian universities or local community members in Salatiga, which is where I studied with virtually in Indonesia. Getting to know their background and what made them interested in Indonesian, learning about the language and culture, because everyone's brought together for a different reason. So it was really fascinating getting to know people, and you can still do that virtually as well. So it was a great opportunity to just continue doing that, even though we can't be in person. And I think another thing probably would be learning topics specifically related to Indonesia. When you go to another country, you end up learning a lot about the culture and this, sense of cultural immersion, and you learn topics and issues that are specifically relevant to that country. So for me, it was learning about kind of the universities of Indonesia, how students study, from the environment to local businesses as well. And Nellie and I did a similar program as well, so she can speak about this as well. But it was just interesting getting to hear from the local community from Indonesia, just bringing together online as well. You'd never think that'd be possible, but now in 2021, we can do that. So it was still quite an incredible experience.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Now I would like to finish up with Mel giving us some highlights. Not only has she gone on exchange and done some activities, but she has also heard many stories of other students that have gone.
Actually, that's the best part of my job, is to hear the student stories when they come back. So, even though it's virtual at the moment, it's still great to hear the benefits, and I look forward to when students can actually go again. But for me, I always wanted to live in America, and a semester exchange was a perfect chance to do that without having to try and get visas sorted and work permits and all of that. So it was a really great way to really get to know what it's like to live in the States for a longer period. I'd visited many times. So yes, the football games are as crazy as what you see on TV. Yes, they do love their university. I've never been one at La Trobe to wear like a La Trobe hoodie to uni. I think people would look at you and go, what are you doing? But over there, if you don't wear school colors, they're looking at you going, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you in the red and like the yellow and black? Like, and at football games, you would try and find something that would like work. You would find a bit of clothing that had the colors of the school or the logos or whatever just to wear to fit in, because it was like there's a lot of school pride over there, uni pride. So I don't know, I loved it. And I mean, I love Halloween, so of course going to America in the fall was a no-brainer. Like, I could experience what Halloween was like over there with all the decorations. I actually went to Dollywood, which is Dolly Parton's theme park over in Tennessee during Halloween, and they had their Halloween festival. So that was really, really cool. But look, I can talk for hours on these things, and I'm sure everyone who's been on an experience can do it as well. But when it comes to the short program, that one I loved. It was actually my fourth time to Japan. with that program. And it was a little different because I'd obviously never studied in Japan before. So to be going to a university and interacting with the Japanese students was really nice. They're just so adorable. The Japanese are so adorable. And I love the culture. And I was running around like an idiot all day, every day, just trying to fit as much as I could into my 2-week experience. And one of my highlights is going with a friend came with me as well, which was fantastic. And one night we went to a Dracula themed cafe restaurant and sat in like what felt like a coffin and ate like food that was related to all that. They've got themed cafes everywhere. So, you know, this is where the cultural aspect comes in. You can really get to see what another country's like. And with Japan, the old and the new blend really nicely together. So yeah, anyway, I feel like I say, I can talk about this all day. So I will stop there and hand it back to you, Macy.
Thanks, Mel. You can see everyone here on the panel today has a very excitement when they talk about their exchange or in-short programs or virtual programs they did, because you can see that even though at home or overseas that they have such love and passion, the highlights that stand out and remind you of the journey you took to get to where you are now. So that brings me to the other question, is where I'm going to ask Mel, is when can I go on exchange?
Yeah, like I know during these current times with the global pandemic and international travel is not happening. And I know it's a question everyone wants to have answered. And speaking from, you know, my employment side of things with Trobe Abroad, it's a really tough thing. Semester exchange is something you need to plan like a good 12 months in advance. That's when the whole process starts. And Madeline and Nellie would, you know, attest to this, of how far in advance you actually start the planning of this before you go. So this is something that even though we can't travel right now, it's really good to start the planning process. So as soon as we know when travel is allowed, then we can let you know which semester is open for going overseas. But however, look, not all is lost, because as you can see, there are plenty of virtual programs that are beneficial. So even if you want to get something in now while you're waiting and get that little taste test of what it could be like, virtual programs are available now during the summer break, and it's really worthwhile considering.
Thank you, Mel. Now, the next question I'm going to move on to, which I think is quite important. When you do go on exchange, do you ever get homesick? And I'm going to ask Madeline first to give her insight about this.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose I have sort of two ways to answer this question. For me, absolutely. I'm someone with a lot of anxiety, and I was really worried about being alone on the other side of the world for 6 months. So before I went, I spoke to my psychologist through La Trobe Counselling, by the way, which all students have access to. And I spoke to her about my concerns about being away. And she was amazing. She helped me establish some techniques or exercises that I could use to manage my anxiety while I was overseas. And I also, the most helpful thing I did was to arrange to have video conferencing sessions with her while I was away, which back then was something that, you know, wasn't really done. Although now obviously we're all very accustomed with Zoom. But yeah, she was more than happy to do that. So I had that support system while I was away. I also made friends. I really actively made sure that I formed social connections as soon as I arrived, because I knew that, you know, here O-Week is maybe a bit of a joke, but when you're away and you don't know who you're going to meet, you really have to throw yourself into those activities. And so I did, and I made amazing friends in O-Week, who are the friends I'm still in contact with today. So I sort of had that support network. They were all a lot closer to home, or most of them were, because I think when you're away, you realize how physically far Australia is. Like, many of them had friends and family visiting even every weekend from around Europe. So you kind of get that sense of distance while you're away. That being said, I had the most amazing time, and I was honestly rarely homesick. In the end, after all my worry about it, I had an amazing time. I found it really hard for the first maybe 2 weeks. I was traveling by myself before arriving in Norway, and I made a couple of adjustments to my travel plans to get to Oslo a little bit earlier, because I had some family there who I was meeting. And, you know, it was amazing. I think I reached out to my family if I ever felt a bit isolated, but mostly I was having such a good time that I really didn't have time to be homesick. So I think whilst, yeah, absolutely, it can be hard being away from home, mostly it's amazing. And, you know, you just have to know yourself and know what's going to help you get through the challenging times.
Thank you. I'm going to now ask Nellie for her input to see if she got homesick or how she dealt with it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing the overseas program, like I got a little bit homesick, but honestly, it wasn't so bad, and it kind of subsided pretty quickly because I was so busy, like doing things like constantly, like keeping busy and going places and being social, that it wasn't so bad. And I mean, yeah, you still gotta like, you know, call your family and call your friends to just keep in touch with them. Um, but yeah, I just think I was enjoying my time so much I didn't really have time to be homesick, honestly. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to Mel to ask if she ever experienced getting homesick and maybe any insights she received from students and any systems they have in place in case students actually do get homesick while on exchange.
Yeah, no, look, for me, I'm a seasoned traveler. I'm at 64 countries currently in all 50 US states. So for me, going on exchange, I wasn't homesick just because for me, like I was used to traveling. But don't get me wrong, my very, very first trip abroad where I left everything behind, I had a freak out one night in Japan in a hotel room going, what the hell am I doing? So look, it is natural to think that, especially if you haven't been to a lot of places or even on your own, because you are going on your own. It's not like you're going on a holiday with your parents to, you know, to the South Pacific. But going across to America, just remember with a semester exchange or even a short program, it's only a short amount of time, really. In the big scheme of things, a semester exchange is what, 3-4 months. So it's not a huge amount of time, but I mean, there still is that process to get over it once you get there and you do have that mini freak out like I did in Japan. I was on my own. I had no one to talk to, and this is pre-internet days. So I didn't even have the chance to like email people or FaceTime. But look, again, like Madeline and Nellie said, it's about getting involved straight up. All the universities should have like an international welcome week where you get to know everybody else, you make your friends, you get involved. But the staff at the host universities are always there if you go, look, I'm not coping very well, I need someone to talk to. They will point you in the right direction. Just like La Trobe has our counsellors that the students visiting us can use, there will be people to help when you're on the other side. It does help to call family and have a chat, but sometimes that could actually be detrimental too because you're still thinking about home. So it's a fine balance of I want to talk to my family, but I also want to immerse myself in this experience. So it's just, you know, talk to your family, wean yourself off them a little bit, and before long they'll be like, where are you? What are you doing? Are you still alive? Like, because you haven't posted on, you know, Instagram for a while. So, well, no, I'm lying. You'll be posting on Instagram every day when you're on a program. So they'll know you're fine. You don't even have to talk to them. They just look at your socials. But yeah, so there is support out there.
Thank you guys for responding to that question. It's lovely to know that there is tremendous support from the partners organisation and through La Trobe. So if anyone is ever worried about getting homesick, please feel reach out to the psychologist, and anyone else will always here to help. Now, this brings me to my next question is, what are some key aspects I need to consider about planning on going on exchange when the borders open? I'm going to direct this to Madeline first and see what key aspects she recommends you look into first.
Yeah, I think Mel mentioned earlier that applying for exchange is a really big task. It takes a lot of time and a lot of research. So it's always worth getting started early. I know I started looking probably 18 months or a little bit less before I actually ended up leaving, and I started applying properly 12 months beforehand. So I think firstly, you need to know if you can fit a semester exchange into your degree. especially if it's a double degree or something with a lot of placements, like a science or, medical sort of degree. Sorry, I'm an arts law student. I don't know the details, but I know it can be challenging because you have to be in Australia for certain times. Also, there might be restrictions on what sort of classes you can take overseas. For example, in my law degree, I'm not allowed to take any core subjects while overseas, only electives, and that's not negotiable. So I think looking into whatever restrictions there might be about when you can go on exchange and what subjects you can take is a really great place to start. Once you know that, and you know which subjects you can take electives or any subjects you're allowed to substitute for subjects that you take overseas, then you can start working out which semester it might be a good idea to go in. Obviously, it depends on what point you are in your degree. If you've only got a year left, you probably have limited options. But if you're at the start of your degree, I went in my second year, so I had 3 years left and I could play around with meeting all the core subjects and making sure I met the prerequisites before I got to them. So really sitting down, in fact, I had my study plan and I cut out every individual subject and noted on any co-requisites or prerequisites, and I just played around with it physically to try and work it out. It's really hard, so I definitely recommend taking the time to work through what subjects you can take and when. I'm just referring to my notes. And you can also start saving now. Exchange isn't cheap, so you can start looking into the different funding options. I think we're going to discuss this more later, but you can think about if you're saving your own money, if you're applying for a different scholarship or maybe a loan, and start looking into the specific requirements for that. For example, the scholarship which Macy mentioned I received, you had to get a certain WAM. So maybe you're thinking about building up your marks if you want to aim for that. If that's not an option, looking into the other funding availabilities so that you're prepared, I suppose. I also think if you are towards the end of your degree, it could be worth looking into some virtual options, because realistically, we don't know when we're going to be able to travel overseas again, especially not for a semester of exchange. So, it's a bit disappointing to hear, but it's worth looking into because, as Catherine and Nellie mentioned, they're really valuable opportunities and you shouldn't underestimate them if you think there's a possibility you won't be able to get overseas. Lastly, my last piece of advice is you have to research the institution you want to go on exchange to. Think about what country, if there's a language you want to learn, and especially because some institutions don't offer exchange to all degrees. Some might only provide for nursing students, for example. If you're studying law, then you might not be able to go there. That being said, it's worth reaching out to Trobe abroad because there's often some flexibility, and it's worth exploring if you've got your heart set on a particular institution. So yeah, I suppose the bottom line is do your research.
Thank you, Madeline. Some excellent points you brought up there, that looking at your study plan should be the first thing you're looking into, see if you're even eligible for it. So thank you for that. Now I want to move on to Nellie to see if she's got any key concepts you should look into before going overseas.
I think that before, like when you're preparing to go overseas, I think it really is important to, plan ahead. Because it is a long process and there are a lot of steps and it's hard sometimes to keep up to date with all of them. So I definitely tried to keep on top of planning. So I think lists are great for this sort of thing. Like if you have a list or lists, so you can write down, when does this need to be done by, and what have I got to, which documents have I prepared already, and kind of setting reminders for yourself, and just, if you have, keep it simple, and that way you can really keep on top of it, and have everything prepared on time. I think I didn't realize that I had to renew my passport before I went on exchange, and so I ended up having to get it was like an emergency passport, which was more expensive than just getting a normal passport. So if I'd checked that and maybe written that on a list somewhere, maybe that wouldn't have happened. So yeah, it is important. And I think given, how uncertain things are in the world right now, You know, if, you know, hopefully people can start going on exchange overseas in country. But when that happens, I think it's important just to be like really consider your safety. And I think it's really important to stay up to date with travel advice from the Australian government. You know, because things, you can't always predict what's going to happen, and things can change pretty rapidly. Yeah, so like when I was, when I was on exchange early in 2020, we couldn't have predicted that a pandemic was going to unfold, right? So we had, like, over the span of a few days, we received vital advice from the Australian government and from our home universities that it was unsafe to be overseas, and that we had to come home. So yeah, just within a few days, we had to get documentation ready, book flights, make arrangements to come home. So yeah, definitely prepare and put your safety first is something that I think is definitely important.
Thank you, Nellie. It's really important notes that you said there. Definitely with the current times with COVID-19, we never know what's going to happen around the corner. So it's definitely good to be on track with all the regulations and government restrictions and everything. So thank you for that. Now I'd like to move on to Mel to see if she's got any insight to a key concept you should know before going on an exchange.
Well, to be honest, I think Madeline's coming for my job. She's got this down pat. They're like, what am I needed for now? But no, so Madeline did what I'll reiterate what Madeline said about research, and the earlier the better. The more research you can do. It does get quite in-depth and time-consuming to do your research. If you need help of where to start, contact us at the Trobe Abroad. We will help guide you to maybe help narrow down your options, because it can get a little bit overwhelming. So if it gets to that, hit us up. Nellie, that's a really good thing about the passport you said, because in my previous life, I did a stint as a travel agent. And again, that was something we have to make sure that everyone, you must have at least 6 months on your passport before, like, for when you return, from your return date. So given that COVID-19's happened and international travel isn't happening for a while, passports are just sitting in the closet or wherever they are, rotting away, and you don't even know what the expiry date is on them. So please, if you are looking at an exchange, double check your passport date. So you can have that ready to go. They do take some time as well to get processed, especially with if there's lockdowns and restrictions going on. I think the other good thing was that Nellie mentioned was about the Australian government safety, smart traveler website, essentially keeping up to date. When I was on exchange in America, we actually had a hurricane come through, and I was getting emails from La Trobe Abroad at the time saying, "Are you okay? Is everything fine? We know there's a hurricane heading your way." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine. We're inland. This isn't a big deal for us inland." But when it came to last year, I was with La Trobe Abroad when that happened, and we had to call everyone home. So really what I learned is that if La Trobe Abroad suggests strongly that you should return home, you should return home and really consider it. Do not hold out, because you could end up being stuck overseas still. It did happen very quickly. No one could have predicted it. So if we are strongly recommending that you consider coming home, please take that seriously. Okay, we are doing this for your best interest. We do not want to ruin your time overseas, God knows, because we know the value of it, but we also take your safety very seriously. So anyway, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Some really key concepts were brought up that should be in everyone's mind when applying for exchange. Which leads into the next question is exchange worth waiting for with border restrictions and everything imposed, or should I be looking for virtual online programs? I know I got touched on a little earlier, I think it was by Madeline, and I'm going to go back to Madeline now for her to give some more insight about that.
Yeah, sure. So I haven't done a virtual exchange program, so I can't speak to that. But from hearing from Nellie, Catherine, and a couple of other friends who have, I know it's a really valuable opportunity. And look, it's not the same, and I don't think anyone would say that it was exactly the same. But I think you get many of the same benefits and possibly other benefits as well, you know. So it depends if it's an either or situation. I would like to say do both if you can. Maybe think about doing a virtual program now if that's, you know, the only option we have. And then hopefully, if you're at the start of your degree, or maybe you've got a nice long degree like mine, then you might have time to do an in-person exchange later. So I think it's kind of a yes to both parts of the question. Yes, it's worth waiting to go on exchange in country, but I don't think that should be at the expense of taking the options that are available now, because you'll get something really valuable out of any opportunity that you take up. So do both if you can.
Oh, thank you. That's a really good point. Like, as you said, you have a long degree, so if you can wait 2 years and maybe COVID is dealable at that time, doing a virtual internship or program is definitely worth considering for your current time. So thank you for that. Now I'd like to ask Nellie to see what her thoughts on that question was.
Yeah, I definitely understand the desire to, you know, want to complete an overseas exchange program. But yeah, it is, you know, it's hard to predict when that's possible. So it is a personal decision whether or not you are willing to wait to do an in-country exchange. But there are some like really great options out there, great alternatives that, you know, you can partake in now in the form of virtual programs. So I can say from experience, you know, Achichis has, you know, several virtual programs, such as the one that I completed at the start of the year. And they have experience. They have like over 25 years experience in running these programs. So they really know what they're doing, and they're able to, you know, adapt it to the current global situation, and still provide great training. So I think there's options out there, and you can still get, even though you're not overseas, you can still get great international experience, and it's still valuable. And who knows, even if you are at the end of your degree and you don't end up going on exchange, you might still have, I'm sure like in the future, there'll still be opportunities to go to the country or countries that you want to. But yeah, if fingers crossed, you get to do both if you're wanting to do overseas exchange. But yeah.
Thank you both. Yeah, well, I think what you both have said, that now that given the times, is being on exchange is not possibly an option given the times because of COVID-19. So definitely look into doing what you can do now, which is virtual programs, which is offered by CIS Australia, Global Student, Achichis. There's several organisations, institutes that can provide you with opportunities, and they're definitely worth looking into because they will still give you some insight to what being international, building international connections, cultural differences and everything like that. So you still will build that up even though it's not in country. So thank you for your insight. So the next question I would like to move on is, what skills will you gain from a virtual program? And I would like to ask Nellie first.
So the specific skills that you'll gain from a virtual program will of course differ depending on what program, what your program of choice focuses on. For example, a business internship would obviously differ from a cultural exchange. However, I would say no matter what, you will gain international experience and a better understanding of life in that country. And also, yeah, so for me, the skills that I gained during my program, my virtual program, included improving my fluency of Bahasa Indonesia, expanding my knowledge of Indonesian culture and history. And one other really valuable thing I gained was friendships and connections. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Catherine, what skills did you gain from completing a virtual program?
So I guess I did a language course, a short intensive language course for the teachers. It went for about 3 weeks. And basically I had class every day at the same time, because obviously there was time zones and all that. You've got to consider that when you do virtual programs. I think firstly patience, I think, just outside of the course. It's going to be times where it's going to be tough because you're indoors, you're on a virtual program, you're feeling a bit more relaxed and you're questioning, oh, should I go on and complete this course? Please do. You have signed up for it. And I think being able to get into a routine is another skill as well. So making sure that every day you're doing something in the morning, and then in the afternoon when you have classes, you're prepared for them. I think similarly to Nellie, this opportunity gave me the ability to kind of practice my Bahasa Indonesian skills and improve in areas which in my normal Indonesian class I struggled with, such as speaking and writing skills. I think being able to also increase my vocabulary, because it was an intensive course, it meant that I had more time to kind of focus on certain topics and the vocabulary that came with that. There was a lot of intensive note writing from me. But I think, so apart from differing courses, and it depends on what you sign up for as well, it's normally the same. You'll get the same skills out of it, even if it's online. I think you'll also learn additional skills, particularly when it comes to, organization. I joke about patience, but really, you do need some when you're doing a virtual program, and just perseverance, because there might be times where you're struggling with your Wi-Fi, or there are times where, you're struggling to communicate with someone because of the time zone difference. But you're not alone. You always receive some support, and everyone is in the same boat. I mean, virtual programs aren't easy, but they're worth doing, because at the end of the day, you're able to achieve the same outcomes just through a different format. So don't lose hope. It's really, but you do gain additional skills as well. I'll say it for that.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to ask, is virtual worth doing? And I'm going to ask Nellie first to see her insight. Is it actually worth doing?
I think that virtual is absolutely worth doing, because these programs are designed to still give you an interactive experience, and you'll get to build connections and long-lasting friendships. And if you're partaking in a program that is relevant to your degree, you're also going to have a valuable experience that adds to your university studying experience. I think also, if doing one of these programs fits into your degree and you're able to gain academic credit towards your degree, that's a definite win. Like, I did my program over the summer holidays, so I was able to get credit for that, and that means that I didn't have to do as many subjects in the first semester, which is cool especially if you want to do like a couple programs and then knock off some subjects, and then you don't have to study for as long. I think that's definitely worth it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nellie. I'm going to ask Catherine the same question. Is virtual worth doing as well?
I think that is a really good question. Obviously, it depends on the individual. Everyone's got different preferences. But at the end of the day, we're all still in a pandemic. Travel restrictions are still on. And it gives you something to work for as well, and to count towards your degree and possibly resume as well. whilst we can't travel overseas and enjoy that, that unique cultural immersion experience, we can do something similar online. And it's good to have it's good to be able to consider such an option as this. This wouldn't have been the case maybe a decade ago even. So, and it gives you something to do as well. And it means you're not necessarily wasting maybe a summer thinking about doing something else or not doing anything. You're able to still connect with people abroad. You're still able to get credit for courses. You're still able to learn about new cultures, languages, the histories. Although we can't try certain foods from different countries or can't travel to certain historical sites, we will be able to do that. But in the meanwhile, this is a really good option. And I think a lot of the panelists have touched on this as well, where if you're particularly near the end of your degree and you're running out of time and space, then doing a virtual program is probably a wise choice. It'll give you kind of just that one kind of thing on your degree that says, like, I've gotten credit for this, I've been able to do this whilst we've been in a pandemic. So there is still a chance for you to technically study abroad and connect with another university.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to another question that resolves about money. So I'm really interested in exchange, but I'm worried that I can't afford it. What are some of the scholarship, grants, mobility loans, and everything out there for in-person or exchange I can receive? So I'm going to open it to Madeline first, because she did receive a $7,000 scholarship. So let's see some insight on how she afforded it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to talk about this because I think it's really important, and it can be a real barrier for people because it's expensive. Going on exchange is expensive. However, do not despair. We have lots of options. So firstly, I'll tell you my approach. I was lucky to be living at home and working part-time. So I saved up, I think, about $10,000 from my job, which I knew would cover the basics of exchange. I think by the time I left, I had $12,000, which I was fairly confident would cover everything, because the Trobe gives everyone, I think it's $2,000, Mel can confirm, yeah, gives everyone $2,000 who goes on exchange. So I knew that my kind of airfares would be covered by that, and then I would have $12,000 for everything else. And that's also important because I didn't find out I got the scholarship until I think 6 months before I left, which wasn't going to be enough time for me to save up. So I think having that backup was really important. It also is what allowed me to travel while I was away, because I did receive the $7,000 academic mobility scholarship that paid for, look, I can't remember exactly, but the majority of my key expenses. I think it probably covered rent and groceries, maybe also internal kind of, public transport costs. So that's what allowed me to use the other money I had saved up to travel. That being said, there are some other funding options. You can also get, I think it's called the OS Help Loan from the government, where essentially you get $7,000. Yeah, $7,000, which goes on your HECS, I suppose, basically. So again, that's the same amount that I got in the academic scholarship. So that's probably enough to cover a really significant proportion of your exchange. So I think once you think about all the different bits of funding that you'll receive, plus hopefully you're able to save up some money as well, it can all come together. And if you've got sort of a base cost, like in my head I had, okay, well, as long as I can afford just the 4 months of study, that's the base. And then once that was covered, then you can think, okay, but I'd really love to do X, Y, and Z while I'm away. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to save up the money that you earn from working or from Centrelink or any other source, then you can start looking at the extras. But I think definitely don't be deterred initially because of the cost. Definitely worth speaking to La Trobe Abroad about the anticipated costs. For example, for my university, the University of Oslo had a page which gave a rundown of the anticipated costs of living there, because obviously the cost of living in Norway is quite high. So, if you're interested in a particular university, see if they can give you a little bit of a comparison so that you kind of can start to get your head around how much it will actually cost to live there.
Thank you so much. So now I want to touch on Catherine and Nellie both received NCP mobility grants. So that covered for your virtual program, I believed. Did you want to give any more insight about the program receiving that money? Maybe Catherine.
Okay, so I think along with the application I applied with the Chichis, it was also included with the application for the New Colombo Plan grant. It allowed for me to cover the cost of the whole kind of course. So it was a 3-week course. I think it was around $1,400. I cannot remember. I think Nellie might know, but I think the grant just covered that. So I was really thankful for that. It was a lot of money at the time, and you had to come up with it in a certain amount of time. But I'm glad that I was eligible for the grant. There is an eligibility criteria, and students who are considering obtaining the grant do need to read carefully about it. But for the most part, the grant covered all my expenses for the virtual program. There are less expenses, obviously, because you're not in the country. So things like living, food and stuff, you're not necessarily needing to consider, which is somewhat easier. But at the same time, there's also just the main cost of the course, there's also... so there's no separate application. So when you apply through when I applied through Chichis, it was just part of that as well. I know La Trobe have also grants and loans. I think grants for courses as well. If you're not eligible for the New Colombo Plan grant or not interested in it, then I think La Trobe Study Abroad do offer them. And particularly for Asia, they're quite there's a lot more grants for Asia now, I'm pretty sure. So it's a good advantage to, pursue that, study throughout Asia and get a grant to pay for it. It's a really good investment. There's also the HEX debt. I'm not too familiar with that, to be honest, but there's also that option. So there are a lot more options now, both virtually and in person for grants. And I would totally recommend checking them out, because I think the worst thing you could do is not apply for one and realize halfway down when you've applied for it that, oh, there was a grant after all I could have applied for to pay for it. So they realize that students need the grants, and they're offering grants for them. So
Thank you so much, Catherine. Much like you, Nellie also did you received an NCP mobility grant, but as she did partially complete an exchange program overseas, I'll just see what type of funding she received for that.
For the overseas one, I got NCP as well, I think. I'm trying to think back. I think it was 7,000, something like that. Yeah, or 5,000, something. Yeah, one of those two. Which really helped. I did also get the OHS help loan, just because, it is expensive going on exchange. There's all the flights, and you have to pay to go see the doctor, and make sure you're up to date with your vaccinations and buying stuff you'll need there, and living and travel kind of stuff. So but it is good that there's multiple options for grants and scholarships, both through the uni, through NCP, and with the virtual program, it's great that they cover the entire cost of the course. I know. You've got to meet the eligibility requirement, but if you don't meet the eligibility requirement to get an NCP, say like you're not an Australian citizen, you can still, if you're a student, you can still apply for like a grant with the uni or something like that. So there's options out there for people, which is good.
Thank you so much, Nellie. Now I'm going to direct this to Mel, because as she's part of the study abroad team, she can give us a little bit more insight to what funding is available and where to go to look for this funding information.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, first up, can I just say these guys have basically hit the nail on the head with all of it. There is money out there. If you check, there's always T's and C's with everything when it comes to money. So check them. If you're not eligible for an NCP mobility grant, and you're not sure about what funding there is, feel free to contact us at the Trobe Abroad. But We do have a specific program funding and costs info session that you can watch on demand. It'll be on the website. I do go in depth there about what funding is available, give you rough costs of what you're looking at when it comes to short programs in country, and also exchange in country. I use my own personal example from America too, so you really get a side by side of how much money you can get and how much it's going to cost. When it comes to virtual programs, yeah, like the NCP Mobility Grant, like New Colombo Plan itself is a government initiative to strengthen our relationships with our neighbours in the Indo-Pacific. So there's a lot of money out there to be able to go and, experience their culture and get to know them. And even with the OS Help Loan, it's an interest-free loan from the government that can help you for either, it has to be an in-country program, but either short program or full semester exchange. And you can get two in your university career. So I got mine for both my exchange and my OSP. So I have a very high help debt and I don't even want to look at it, but whatever, I had a great time. So, but even with the virtual, the NCP, because you can get up to $3,000 grants for that, it will cover a lot of programs there. The NCP mobility grant for semester exchange in country is $7,000. So that's the equivalent of the academic mobility scholarship. It's a huge amount. And that is also combinable with the OS Help loan. So there are ways to really get the money together, and we do go in depth with that. But again, with the virtual programs, please, if you're not eligible for an NCP or you're looking at a program that isn't in the Indo-Pacific and there's costs involved, look, let us know, have a chat with us, because we'll let you know what we can provide in the way of grants to go towards those virtual mobility, virtual programs. So I think that's it for me. Check out the info session, please. It's really in depth and I've tried to go into much detail as possible.
Thank you, Mel. To finish up the money section, I did want to go back to Madeline, because she did an in-program and she saved up about $12,000 and she received $7,000. So my question to you is, were you ever concerned about running out of money, or did you run out of money, Madeline?
No, I was really lucky. I had enough money. I didn't worry about it running out. The only consideration, like I say, was, sort of how much extra can I do? I knew I had enough to complete my time in Oslo. It was just, for example, I mentioned before that I went to Svalbard, where there are more polar bears than people. That was really expensive. The flights were, I think like $600, and accommodation is astronomically expensive because it's really isolated. So, I had to sort of make that decision. Can I afford this? And make sure that I definitely have enough food for, money for food and transport and everything. So, but no, I was lucky in that I did have enough to get home safely.
That's good. Did you end up coming away with any money left over, or did you end up using it all on going on and sightseeing and stuff?
Look, I don't remember exactly. I know for certain, I probably would have had a few $100s, maybe even 1,000, because I definitely wasn't stressed about running out of it, and I would have been stressed if it was less than that. I know for certain I had to put a pretty significant deposit down on my student accommodation. I think it was like $1,500. So I got that back when I came home.
Okay, that's fabulous. Thank you for letting us know. Now to finish up, I would like to ask all panelists, do employees want to see international experience on your CV? And how do you think programs will benefit your future career? So I would like to start off with Catherine.
So I guess the immediate answer to that is yes, they would. And this is based on a lot of what I've picked up from my degree, but also from the university staff and organisations just outside of university, but that are industry organisations. So things like a Chichas and other like Asia Society and stuff. What they're all suggesting is that students need to engage more with the world, engage with specific countries. They'd like to see that international experience because it shows that you're getting out of your comfort zone. You're able to do cross-cultural collaborations. you're able to do, you have those cross-cultural skills, and they're quite unique. Not everyone has them. Not everyone necessarily leaves their own country or their own hometown. So by having that, it gives you an advantage to pursue other interests, but also other jobs as well. So you're able to expand your job network, just not just in Australia, but also internationally. So you could work in countries all over the world. They also like to see language skills as well. So if you're able to learn a language or two, it shows that you're taking time and you're really wanting to know about another country through their language, through their main form of communication. Employees, I think, yes, just if you do also go to Career Hub, they'll also suggest that perhaps do a study abroad program as well, as part of your degree, to show that you're not, like I said, you're getting out of your comfort zone. You're not necessarily just located in your area. It also shows that you're taking, you're having perseverance by going to another country. You're not sure about, but you're putting yourself out there, and it pays off in the long term because you're able to put that on your resume and you're able to show future employees, look, this is me. I'm not just, there are other things I can do. We can connect to organizations, we can expand job networks and such. So there are long-term benefits to this as well as short-term benefits. A pandemic shouldn't stop us. So this is why with the virtual programs and such, they're still interested in it. They don't want you to see that you've kind of not been doing anything in your degree despite having a pandemic, which is obviously why you take a virtual program as well. So I think, because I'm studying international relations, the whole degree is designed for you to go abroad. And it just, you don't want to look back also on university and think, oh, I wish I did this, or I wish I'd gone there, You want to, on a personal level, you shouldn't have those regrets. You should be like, yes, I went here, I've got photos, I've made friends and lots of memories, So there's a professional and personal level, but yeah, the answer to the question is yes. Employees are looking for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine, for your insight. Now I would like to move on to Nellie to see if she's got any insight to seeing if employees want to see this on your CV.
Yeah, I agree with Catherine. Definitely, yes. I think it is seen as a strength, and that it does stand out on your CV. It shows a commitment to completing something that you've set out to do, and it shows that you have a broad worldview, which I think is important, and also can show that you have strengthened your knowledge in a particular area or sector, which is particularly valuable if you're aiming to find employment in that sector. And one thing I think that employers are looking for is adaptability and flexibility, which I think definitely, you've got to be like adaptable and flexible when you're studying overseas. You're adapting to a new culture, and yeah, I think that's an important strength that a lot of employers seem to list as something that they're looking for.
Thank you, Nellie. Now I would like to ask Mel to give some of her insight into this question because she's done both of these programs a little while ago, so she'll be able to tell you how this actually helped her maybe get part of the study abroad team.
Well, I don't think I have had the experience I would be in the position I am now, for sure. Like, I didn't even know that an international education career was even a thing until I was on exchange and I was interacting with staff at the abroad office in America. So it really opened my eyes that this was potentially a great career option. And for me to use my marketing and management business degree to now help everybody else do the same thing is like a dream come true. Honestly, I love it so much. And it isn't just about, it's great to have the experience on your resume, but like everyone said, it's those soft skills, being able to interact with people from other cultures. And especially if you're, even the language courses, even though they're virtual, again, you're dealing with people whose language, English might not be their first language. So you have to then try and work out ways to communicate and be patient. And especially when you're on Zoom, everyone knows about the delays and when you're trying to talk over each other and you've always got that awkward pause. So it's about learning that. And now that we're all sort of moving to a remote workforce, having this kind of remote skills is really useful as well. So you can say, yep, no, I've been able to do this program online. I turn up on time. I'm able to communicate. These are the skills I've learned that will help me in the role later on. And I think, again, when you're in country, it's the resilience. Hey, there's a hurricane coming. What do you do? I mean, Nellie, you're coming home from COVID. It's a great example to be able to use, even in interviews. Tell us a time when you've had to overcome adversity. Well, hello, I've just got pulled back from being on a great program because of COVID, and I've had to, within a matter of days, reorganize my life to go home. Like, even adversity can be turned into a benefit. Things happen when you're overseas and you can't avoid it. You've just got to roll with it. That's the resilience that comes in. And in a workplace, that happens every day. You've got to be able to go with the flow, see what problems come up and how do you tackle those. So, even the worst things that happen to you while you're overseas can be turned into a benefit later on, that employers are going to want those skills. So, for me personally, I think, it definitely helped me because I'm here. So
Thank you, Mel. Now to finish up, I would like to open the floor to anyone else that would like to ask questions. Shiri did bring up, she wanted to ask Catherine a question. And that question would be, can Catherine give us insights to a virtual program?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in the virtual, because it's obviously new to La Trobe Abroad, and how the virtual programs, I suppose, run. And I think you mentioned, Catherine, that there were cultural aspects that they were able to bring into the virtual program. Nellie might have had the same experience. I'd really like to know what they did to make you feel like there was a cultural aspect to the program you did with the Chi-Chis.
Okay, so because this is my first kind of online program, just generally study abroad program, I had no idea what to expect. I literally just came in with a clear head and I was like, let's see how it goes. I don't want to have any high hopes because I'll be doing this course for 3 weeks. So I started off, I think it was early January, and I thought, establish a routine every day that's going to get me through it. So, but as part of the course, I think it was quite intensive in terms of the content every day. So we almost did a topic every day, and we had a vocabulary list we had to learn. We did get homework, so that was fun. But it was good. It was good that we got homework as well, because it felt like a genuine course we were doing. We were able to take it home that night, do it, and then submit it the next day. We're also with other Australian students as well at I think it was Salatiga University, which is in Central Java. We learned a bit about, I guess, the culture of Salatiga and the local community. So I think at one point we met a really lovely lady. She was I'm trying to remember, she was part of a small business that sold, I can't remember what it was, Nellie, but it was like a root vegetable. I forgot the Indonesian. I can't believe it, but
Keju.
Keju, that's right.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how they came about with the business idea, and she was showing us all. She actually had it in person. She was showing it to us, and I guess she was telling us her story. And we all, given that it was a language class, we had to write notes and translate. So it was a good challenge, because it meant we asked her questions in Indonesian, we conversed with her. We also spoke with other individuals as well. I think there was a farmer, his business in Salatiga. So it was just, and it helped us practice our Indonesian, because when we're online, we don't necessarily have that kind of face-to-face connection. We can't necessarily read body language. So being able to at least kind of practice online with someone who's actually in the country was really helpful. In terms of the content, I think learning about kind of the history and issues related to Indonesia, like the environment. One of our assignments, we had to do a presentation. I did mine on the environment. It was, and just learning topics specifically related to Salatiga, but also kind of a domestic environmental issue. Yeah, there was
Would you
also.
say it's more language, it was more language focused than cultural in that sense then, I suppose, the course that you did?
Yeah, so I did a language course, but there were definitely cultural classes as well. There was almost a balance.
Okay.
We also, through Achichas, we got to meet up with the local staff from Achichas and speak to them as well. There was a balance. I mainly speak about the language course because that's what I did as well. But we also spoke to some university students there, which was really nice because we're all at the same level, same boat, and we asked them how they were faring during the pandemic as well, and what kind of some of the challenges they were facing. But I think there is, I would not lie and say that there wasn't like certain parts I missed. I would like to see in a study abroad, like being able to go out to dinner with friends or to be able to visit certain sites in Indonesia. I mean, my goodness, I can't wait to for this pandemic to be over and just get on a plane. But I think I think still we're still lucky enough to be able to do this. And I just hope people realize that and take the opportunity, because you're able to do something in the meanwhile and still connect with people in their countries and still ask them, like, how's it going? How are you faring during the pandemic? Still learn about other people's stories and lives. And it's still a really good opportunity to invest in as well. But I think Nellie can also talk more about her experiences, because she and I were in the same class, basically.
Thank you, guys. Due to time, I'm going to wrap up the session now with the final question, which I'm going to ask Mel, is who should I contact if I want to discuss program options?
Really important question too, because obviously everyone is now super excited to either do an in-country or virtual program, thanks to all of our amazing panelists today. So to connect with us at La Trobe Abroad, submit an inquiry through Ask La Trobe online and go for the overseas study option. You can use that QR code not to check in, you don't have to check in, but to scan it, and it'll take you to our website. On our website, in the Global Lounge page, you'll find the links to make an appointment with us via Career Hub. So we'll have one-on-one 15-minute appointments with you, and we can go in depth more about the programs and what might work for you. You've got our socials there, so you can follow that. Any programs that we have come up that we think are relevant for people, we'll throw them on there. We're going to have a bit more about Achichis coming up too, because obviously during the pandemic, they've been able to pivot and offer these amazing programs online that really there's something almost for every student. So that's how you get a hold of us at the moment.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to take the opportunity to thank each panelist for taking your time to come to today's lengthy session to answer all the questions, and we are very appreciative to get some student insight. So I would like to thank Nellie, Catherine and Madeline, as well as Mel, for coming along and answering the questions.